Oh my god, we're almost in the same month as God of War Ragnarok. Oh man, I'm not gonna get any reading done in November. Oh my gosh. Hello everyone, we have reached the end of yet another month, so it's time to look forward to some brand new books heading our way next month. Heading into our libraries because we all clearly don't have that self-control, especially when it comes to the new and shiny book. Now, November isn't necessarily a big month for book releases in terms of how many there are. Normally when I do these lists, I do like 20 to 25 books, absolutely drowning you and all things new releases, but this month is slightly less, but they are some of the most exciting, some of the most hyped books of the year. I have fantasy, sci-fi, and horror for you as always, all ranging from YA to adult. I actually don't have any middle grade on this list for the first time in a while. As always though, I can't mention every book, so if I miss one that you're super pumped about, let me know in the comments, or let us all know in the comments. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in and start on November 1st. We have the Luminaries. So Susan Dennard, the author most known for her Witchland series, is back with a brand new novel in the genre of contemporary fantasy. This is definitely taking a much sinister route, as it kind of sounds like it's full of dark magic. And okay, it does have a very YA plot to it, like something you typically see, which I'm sure will make a lot of die-hard YA fans readers happy. So it's set in a world where monsters and nightmares exist and people train to hunt them. In fact, there's like a secret society called the Luminaries, aka the title, to guard the forest and stop the monsters from escaping into this town. And then we have our 16-year-old protagonist, Winnie, and her family, who are unfortunately outcast because of her father being revealed as a spy, while she is finally able to enter these trials the town holds in hopes of earning their trust back. So we definitely got some angst, which is where a lot of the YA comes from. A competition, again, a very YA thing. And then we have like this dark, spooky forest. Definitely a fall read if you're looking for one. And then we have the Arrestless Truth. This is a sequel / companion novel, I'm not entirely sure which one, in the Last Binding series, which is a queer historical fantasy that began with A Marvelous Light. I actually saw a review that described this book as lesbian Knives Out, and wow, that's one heck of a seller. And Knives Out is a little bit of a creepy, very weird movie, and this cover does not give me that. So reviewer, what the hell did you read? I want to know. Is this cover just completely a ruse? So here we follow Maud Blythe, who has always longed for adventure, which is why she volunteered to serve as an old lady's companion on an ocean liner, because she thought it could help her weasel her way into being able to help her older brother to unravel a magical conspiracy that apparently began generations ago. So you're telling me it takes place on the ocean, where terrifying giant monsters lurk. Maybe that's where the Knives Out comparison comes from. I mean, it's the ocean, it's terrifying. I personally haven't read the first book, so I'm unsure if that is alluding to something that happened before, or if this is completely its own story. Nevertheless, the cover is gorgeous, and I really like how they stuck with a theme for both novels. And then we have Slaughtered Gods. With a title like that, you know shit's about to hit the fan. This marks the end of the Hanged God trilogy, which is a Norse mythology inspired fantasy. Honestly, a perfectly timed conclusion with God of War Ragnarok coming out next month. Oh my god, we're almost in the same month as God of War Ragnarok. Oh man, I'm not gonna get any reading done in November. Oh my gosh. Anyways, I own the first two books, which are Northern Wrath, and then we have book 2, Shackled Fates. So if we put these together, they look freaking gorgeous. They are very cool looking books. If you are looking for a fantasy with like huge battle scenes, kind of like John Gwyn a little bit, then I highly recommend checking these out. I haven't read them personally, but I've always people have always told me like they're just full of huge battle scenes where there's just like huge armies battling and it's like high stakes, and it just sounds really, really cool. Even though I knew the end, so this is basically a lesbian noir fantasy with a serial killer. It sounds like a moody story already, and what a perfect time for its release during the fall. So we're following Helen, and she is a mystic private eye living in 1930s Chicago. And in the past, she did something desperate and her time is running out before she has to pay. So she spends her final weekend with her girlfriend, but one last dangerous job drops into her lap. This one is full of secret societies, magic, and angels and demons. I feel like a lot of detective stories involve like angels and demons. That's a very recurring theme I've noticed. And not even just like in books, also in video games as well and movies. I guess I'm kind of thinking of like The Last Mile in Thunder City. There's The Wolf Among Us, and Constantine too. Okay, finally moving on to November 8th, we have Legends and Lattes. So this is a book that went from a simple tweet on Twitter into a viral book that everyone and their mother has read at this point. And it's finally getting an official release from Tor. It was self-published, but it got the W. We got the traditional treatment, and it will be in bookstores on November 8th. This is a very cozy and warm fantasy all about an orc who is stepping away from the life of adventuring and opens up a coffee shop in a small fantasy town. It is very adorable. This cover is exactly what the story is. It's very low stakes, simple, but very, very enjoyable. It's an easy read that will probably make you smile, even if you like brutal, bloody fantasy like I do. This is a nice break from that, but still like keeping that classic fantasy feel. Next up is a book that I have an arc to, so I can actually show you the physical copy, and that is the Stars Undying. If you were looking for a new sci-fi to dive into, then look no farther. This is a queer space opera debut inspired by the rise and fall of ancient Rome and Egypt. And it reinvents the lives of Cleopatra and Julius Caesar. You know how sometimes you read the synopsis for a book and immediately want to read it? That's exactly what this book did to me. I seriously adore Egyptian-based stories. Like Assassin's Creed Origins is in my top 3 Assassin's Creed games for that reason. I can't wait to see how the author intertwines that history we all know a little bit about at least, and just throws it into a space setting. I just don't know what to expect besides betrayal, probably. Anyways, look out for this one for sure. And then we have Empire of Exiles. This is a brand new epic fantasy that just screams like something I'm going to love. It takes place decades after a brutal failed coup attempt, and a young scribe arrives in the capital city and suddenly finds himself at the center of a murder that could threaten the empire. So to discover the truth, he teams up with a mage, an archivist, and a detective. So it's like a whodunit mystery set in an epic fantasy environment. It reminds me a little bit of The Justice of Kings, one of my favorite books. So if it's anything like that, we have a winner. I do plan on picking this one up, so if you want to subscribe to hear my review soon, click that red button. Bloodmarked. This is the highly anticipated sequel to Legendborn, a YA fantasy bestseller debut that released in 2020. Wow. It does not seem that long ago, and also it feels like a million years, like all at the same time. It definitely took the book community by storm, and finally 2 years later, we have the continuation. It's a YA fantasy tale on what it means to be strong and true to yourself. It reinvents the King Arthur legend and braids together Southern folk traditions and Black girl magic into an interesting modern book. It's a very hyped trilogy. I know a lot of you must be very excited, and the wait is almost over. Also coming out on that same day is Nubia The Awakening. Isn't this cover like super eye-catching? It looks like a poster for like some upcoming movie. Okay, so this is a West African YA fantasy set in a dystopian future New York City. We have 3 teenagers whose people are climate change refugees from an African utopia called Nubia. There are themes of poverty, oppression, immigration, family, and even magic. It sounds very heavy, but readers so far have said it's very engaging, and I can totally sense that. It's kind of reminding me of like Black Panther a little bit, but with teenagers instead. I expect this one to be very good. Okay, moving along to November 15th, we have The Lost Metal. Wax and Wayne and the gang are back in this 4th installment in the Alloy of Law series, the book that I'm personally most excited about from this list, and one I'll be reading for sure before the year ends. If you have read any of Sanderson's books before, especially the Mistborn novels, I highly recommend checking the series out if you haven't yet, because I know a lot of people who have read the Mistborn series but haven't read this one yet. While it's worth the read, it has a historical investigative setting to it, like goofy detectives lives in a fantasy world. They are so funny and so wholesome. I'm shaking with excitement to see where the story goes and how it ends. I know there's a big time jump that happens at the beginning of this, and yeah, I'm curious and I'm really pumped for it. Probably a lot of people going to be reading this one next month. Heart of the Sun Warrior, another very, very highly anticipated sequel. Earlier this year, I think it was earlier this year, we all freaked out with the release of Daughter of the Moon Goddess because of the beautiful sounding story and the stunning cover. And it looks like all of that is being extended to its sequel/conclusion because this is only a duology. So we get the ending here. The first one followed our main character as she escapes from the moon on a cloud, I just mentioned, to the world below and experiences humans for the first time. It's all magical, but she is also surrounded by enemies. If you are looking for a romantic Chinese mythology inspired fantasy that you can binge soon, then you definitely have this one to keep you busy. Tread of Angels. This is by Rebecca Roanhorse, the author of Black Sun and other books as well, but Black Sun I feel like is one of her most popular. This is very much in a whole different genre. Not only because it's a novella, so a short book, but it's a Western whodunit mystery. Whoa, like very, very different. So it takes place in a historical setting about a long ago war between God and Lucifer. And we follow two sisters, but one of them is accused of murder and taken away by the angelic justice system. And the other sister has to save her from execution with the aid of some, I don't know, probably some hot angels. Probably. This is unlike anything I've seen from this author, so I'm really curious on how this is going to go with her fans. It's probably amazing, let's be honest. Africa Risen. So one of the prettiest covers on this list, in my opinion. So this is an anthology collecting a bunch of different stories exploring the culture of Africa, both the past and present. And it's in the genre of sci-fi, I think, with maybe a mix of fantasy as well. It sounds very interesting, especially since we get a multiple perspective lens from many different African authors. Now there are 32 stories in this collection, which is a lot. Holy smokes. Normally you only get like, I don't know, half that or even less. Sometimes with anthologies, like it can be a mixed bag, but with 32 stories, there's more chances, I feel like, of you liking a lot of them, which just like ups the quality of life. There's a lot of content in this book, so be on the lookout for it on the 15th. And finally, moving on to the last date, and the last book, we have The Lonesome Crown. Alrighty, so this is a novel that has been long awaited, I feel like. It's a finale to the 5 Warrior Angels trilogy. Now, these books are chonkers, like some of the biggest books that I own. And it looks like this one is topping at over 1,000 pages. That's a lot of grim, dark fantasy to get lost in. If you're unfamiliar with the first book, The Forgetting Moon, we have a large cast of characters sharing a world with monsters and creatures, and war is just like a normal daily occurrence, as it seems the only way to survive and be seen as worth the notice of the gods is by fighting and earning your right to live. So very brutal. It's very raw, very honest. I'm sure fans are dying to see how it ends, and it'll be available to you very soon. Alrighty, so those are all the books that are coming out in November that I am personally very excited about and I think is worth mentioning to you. Tell me down below which ones that you're most excited about. Is there a book that I missed? Because I would love to know. I would love to be made aware of it, especially if it's a fantasy or sci-fi. Like this video really helps me out. If you would like to see more of these types of videos, because I do them every single month, be sure to subscribe and turn on my post notifications. I typically upload them toward the end of the month. Thank you so much for watching, and until we meet again, happy reading.